Hey everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. spacedoutradio.com, shop there today, and make yourself look good. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. It is going to be an awesome show tonight. We're going to be jumping into the paranormal, which we don't normally have right here at the After Hours radio show, but we're going to make sure that we jump into it here tonight with our guests, Ryan C. Jones and Dennis Estlock. It's going to be a fantastic show, guys. Hours 1 and 2, don't you go anywhere. Also, Hour 3, Drew Banky and the After Hours wrap up. Also, Steve Stockton, Tales Untold, Missing Person Mysteries. Another fantastic weekend right here on the Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. Let me go ahead and jump on out there and see who has come in first, courtesy of Race Fan. Looks like Race Fan comes in with the gold, Kitty Cattywhack with the silver, and JSCO77 with the bronze. Let's go ahead and see who else has decided to join us today. We do appreciate Race Fan, Kitty Cattywhack as well, saying hello once again because I had already left a message in the chat yesterday. I know it does that, Kitty Cattywhack. Thanks for coming on in. We do appreciate showing up. Roger Murray saying Preston Denton reported UFO spotted flying around wildfires in Los Angeles. I did see some footage on that. I don't know what to think. I haven't really been able to deep dive into it, but we can talk about that. Thanks for coming in, Roger Murray. Also giving a shout out to the guests today, Ryan Jones and Dennis Estlock. Hello, happy to see you. Welcome to the show. And we have UFO Tim James in the building saying, howdy all, happy Saturday. Thanks for coming in, Tim James. We appreciate you. Frankie B as well. Thanks for showing up here. Tonight, we got Bim Jim. Bim Jim is in the building. Thanks for coming on in, Bim Jim. Karen in the Woo Train. Good evening, Robin SOR. Thanks for showing on up here, Karen. We appreciate you supporting tonight. We have a long list, and I think we're going to run out of time. I know we are, actually. See Eternity Eternal. I see you out there. Lars Jansen. Carl Bittner. Appreciate you showing up. Jessica S. I see you. Deb from Sacramento. I see you out there as well. Who else do we have? Miss Catherine Jones is here. Greeting, Mr. Rob G. Miss Catherine Jones. Thanks for showing up. Howie, Ed Odell. Hey, Howie, what's up? What is up, you guys? Tips Top Hat, Brother Rob G. We love the Top Hat, Ed, and thanks for coming on in and supporting the show tonight. Who else do we have? Rhonda. See Rhonda out there. Also, Riff Nation. It's going down. We appreciate you guys all showing up here. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and get ready to start the podcast side of this, and then the radio side, as you know how we do right here on Spaced Out Radio. So let's get the podcast side started. Why don't we? Welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. Tonight we have Ryan Jones and Dennis Estlock, and we're going to be talking paranormal, all sorts of good stuff for hours 1 and 2. Then Drew Banky and Steve Stockton, hours number 3. Great show. Don't go anywhere. We're going to radio here in 5 seconds. Let's go. Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. And tonight we're broadcasting to you on our terrestrial affiliates across North America, plus digitally on digital platforms all around the world. Don't forget, you can access our archives for absolutely free. YouTube.com/@SpacedOutRadio. And while you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to follow us on X and Instagram @SpacedOutRadio and @SpacedOutRadio Show. Our website is still SpacedOutRadio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with the S1 Newswire. You can get yourself some official Spaced Out swag. Plus, you can rock out to the man you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot, and so much more. Great show tonight. We're going to have Ryan Jones and Dennis Estlock joining us talking paranormal for hours 1 and 2. Then we have Steve Stockton tells Untold Missing Person Mysteries, plus Drew Banky with the After Hours wrap-up in hour number 3. Action-packed, jam-packed show, as we like to have it around here. So glad to see everyone showing up here tonight to support what it is that we do. And we're going to go ahead and just jump right into the show. We're not going to hold you back at all. We're going to go ahead and bring in our guests for the night, Mr. Dennis Estlock and Ryan Jones. How are you guys?
Hello.
Doing wonderful here. Greetings, Rob.
Good. So glad to have you guys here on the After Hours radio show. And we're going to be getting into some good paranormal stuff tonight. Being as this is the first interview, and I always do this, I'm pretty sure a lot of people do. But as we are meeting for the first time here, I would love to hear how you both came into the paranormal, what experiences you may have had growing up, and then kind of what got you guys together to team up, what led you guys to team up.
Go ahead, Ryan. I'll let you run with the ball.
Well, I was actually really scared of the paranormal growing up as a kid. I remember one year I got the Ghosts of Richmond book from my mom, and I did not want to sleep with it in my room because in my kid brain, I was thinking the ghosts were going to pop out the book and come get me. So when I got it, I took the book downstairs and just left it in the basement. And I always slept with the door open and the hall light on because I think the idea of the unknown scared me. So as I got older, I went to college. I went to Radford University, and my friends would watch these ghost shows on TV, and I'd watch them with them, and I would I'd get into the history, the historical part of like the stories behind the ghosts or what caused the spirits to occupy our house or whatever. So a few years later, I get married and I start watching Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters and all those shows on the Travel Channel. And this is right around the time Facebook started. So I start posting stuff on Facebook. Oh, I can't watch Ghost Zach Bagans and Ghost Adventures. And my wife's uncle at the time was starting a paranormal team with Ed Odell called All Seeing Paranormal Society. And he had noticed that I was posting all the stuff about Ghost Adventures and stuff like that. So he asked her if we would be interested in joining the group. So I'm like, heck yeah. So we joined ASPS. And then I hooked up with Dennis like probably a year and a half later. I was a guest, or Howie and I were a guest on his podcast. And we kind of hit it off, and we started investigating together. And that's
It's been
that's how we met up.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. How about you, Dennis? What kind of seeded this for you? What led you in the direction where you would one day team up with Ryan?
Man, this goes all the way back to when I was 7. I had an older brother, 4 years older than me. I slept top bunk, he slept bottom bunk, and I woke up one night to my granddaddy looking me eye to eye, telling me goodbye. He loved me and he'd see me later. Well, they lived a couple hours away. I didn't think they were coming up to visit. Nobody said anything. So I'm like, all right, I'll see you in the morning. No problem. Didn't think any more of it, rolled over and went back to sleep. A couple hours later, Mom came in, turned on the light, yells at us, you boys need to get your butts up. We got to go. Why? Is this because Granddaddy left? When did they even come up? And she's like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, he was here just a little bit ago. He was standing right here, told me goodbye. He loved me and he'd see me later. And she just had this like washed out look on her face. And she's like, you just need to get your butts up. Granddaddy had had a massive heart attack a couple hours earlier and passed. She had just gotten the phone call. So it was time for a couple-hour road trip. Fast forward a couple of more years, I'm probably 10, 12 years old. I got 2 cousins that are right in my time frame, age-wise. One's 3 months, one's 2 years older than me. And we had heard somewhere, man, if you put a recorder in a cemetery, you can hear the dead. We're like, that'd be kind of cool. Well, they had this huge cemetery not far from their house. So if you remember the old, they used to call them boom box, you'd walk like this and have a lean because it weighed so much, 63 D-cell batteries to play a cassette tape. Well, we tote my Christmas gift off into the cemetery, set it up, hit record, go a few hundred feet away, and we captured somebody whistling a tune. And their dad was into music. He was a musician, had a band and everything. We played it for him, and he's like, yeah, it's a song from the 60s. Who's whistling that? We're like, we don't know. So that was my first experience actually doing what we now call an EVP. Of course, then we didn't know anything. Then we stepped forward to when I was 16 and my brother took his own life. And if you've got siblings, you know that energy. They're trying to sneak up on you. They're trying to get a cheap shot in. They're just trying to surprise you, whatever. And I felt like he was right behind me. I felt his energy. And I heard his voice that just said, goodbye, I love you, and I'll always have your back. So I'm on my way to the corner market, man. It's noon. And 9 o'clock that night, 5-0 showed up at the door and let us know that he had been found about 1 o'clock that afternoon hanging in a tree. And I'm like, man, there is no way I saw Granddaddy. I saw my brother. We heard this whistling. So that kind of started me on it. Played with a Ouija some after that. Would go out to cemeteries and things of that nature. That was all in Ohio. And then I moved down here and I took a respite from it. Life just got different. Fast forward a few more years and end up meeting Ryan, and he and Howie, Ed called me about the cabin, and I kind of blew it off. I'm like, come on, man, it's a little log cabin on the side of the highway, little brick house. They're not that old. They're not going to have like history. They don't have anything. It took, Ryan, about a year to convince me to go out and even check them out.
Yeah, it took about, yeah.
In the meantime, I had done a couple of remote views with them and did a couple of small investigations here and there with them. Did Bell Nemus plantation. That was pretty righteous. But finally, he talks me into going out to the cabin. And we're walking through the cabin. It's perfectly normal. It's just a log cabin, beautiful place. We walked into the brick rancher, and just a few steps in the door, I stopped dead in my tracks. And I just told Ryan, I said, man, there's something here that's not human, never has been. This place is just effed up. And while we're in the basement, we hear this just earth-shattering scream, female scream of just sheer terror. And that put us on the path with 360, and Ryan and I have pretty much hung together ever since, just making it happen.
Wow, that is actually awesome to hear. Awesome story there. Let me ask you this quickly, Dennis. So, being that you had that experience with your grandfather at a young age, in that time frame, did you understand what had happened, or is this something you processed later on in life?
Oh, it was definitely later on in life. I mean, at 7 years old, when you see a loved one that you find out had passed, you're kind of going, okay, well, maybe I didn't see it. It just didn't make sense. I'm like, well, how did I tell him? How did he come and tell me goodbye if he was dead? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So it didn't really register at that point.
Wow. And I kind of want to go over real quick here because I ended up skipping this in the beginning, but just a little background on the two gentlemen you guys are watching here. So Ryan actually has been investigating paranormal since 2013. He's the co-founder of the All-Seeing Paranormal Society and Commonwealth Researchers of Paranormal, and is a caretaker at the cabin you were just talking about, cabin on the 360 in Mechanicsville, Virginia, which we will be talking about later on in the show. And he's also the founder and one of the hosts on the Freakin Awesome Paranormal podcast, streaming on KIVE every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Riv Nation Network, which we have Howie Ed Odell out there in the crowd. Shout out to Howie, and also Rhonda Harris from Riff Nation as well. So shout out to you both. And then Dennis, gentleman who just finished speaking here, is a actual medium and a remote viewer. So that's key. And I want to definitely talk or get into that as well. And as 20 years experience as a paranormal investigator, Dennis is the founder of the Commonwealth Researchers of the Paranormal out of Richmond, Virginia. Dennis also the owner and historian of the Cabin on 360. So you guys both have that common thing that you're working on together, Cabin of 360. Just kind of briefly let everyone know what that is so they can get up to speed.
Well, the Cabin on 360 is a haunted property in Mechanicsville, Virginia. There are two houses on the property, the cabin itself, and there is a brick rancher next door. And there is also 7.2 acres of woods behind it. That was the site of the Battle of Bethesda Church. And that is a small battle that took place on the way to the Battle of Cold Harbor, which I think is the deadliest battle per capita of the Civil War, if I'm not mistaken.
Accurate.
And we've talked to a lot of paranormal investigators here, and most tend to be, and I don't know, this is just as coincidence, but they happen to be over on the East Coast and or the Midwest East Coast. Seems to be a lot more history out there, and we've talked about that just as far as the American history going back to like the colonial days. So I'm sure you get a lot of activity out that way. What are some of the other hot spots out there that you would call maybe some favorites?
Man, I definitely have to throw in Pamplin Historical Park, which is 30 miles or so south of us in Dinwiddie, Virginia. It's 424 acres of battlefield. You got Henricus Historical Park, Dunlora Inn, the Exchange Hotel, Belle Grove, and there's just so much around us.
Henricus Park, talk about history. That is the second English settlement in the New World after Jamestown.
Settled in 1611.
And that place is off the hook as far as paranormal activity is concerned.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So let me ask this: going into, because I wanted to get into some of the mediumship abilities that you have, Dennis. I've talked to other mediums as well, and remote viewing. When did that kick in for you? When in life did you realize that you had this ability to do things that most people will say isn't a real thing?
It was kind of, I guess my best answer to that is kind of a fluke. I had always seen like images of places and things like that, but I never truly validated what I saw until, like Ryan mentioned, that I had a podcast. I used to do like 3 nights a week, and I got to talking to Lyle and Tana Lotz. They came on and interviewed with us, and that was Twisted Paranormal Society. And I finally got to meet them in person at a place called the Boxwood Inn. They held a Paracon. And Lyle says, well, listen, man, we got an investigation coming up in a couple of weeks. Why don't you come out and join us? And I just held my hand up to him like to shush him for a minute. And I started rattling off all these things I'm seeing and picking up and hearing. And this entire interaction, like I was getting a tour of this place. And their jaws dropped. They're like, you've got to come join us. And I'm like, okay, I'd be happy to. And he's like, no, you really need to come join us. You have to get validation on everything you just told us, because we investigated it nearly a year ago. It was so cold we didn't spend the full night, but man, you hit on everything we can validate. We've got it. We've got evidence to prove everything you just said. And I don't know how you did that. And that was the first time that I had truly gone all in on just throw it out there, because it's kind of like a medium doesn't want to throw in front of, God and country. I hear voices, I see people that others don't, because the next thing you know, you're in a hug me jacket and you're in this nice comfy padded room going, but I swear it's real. I see them, I hear them.
Yeah.
So I kind of kept it under wraps. And then I did one with Ryan and Howie, Ed, for Belnemus Plantation. And that one I had, and I don't know what you would call him, whoever the house servant, like the head house servant was for this old plantation, his name was Washington, kind of led me through the whole house and introduced me to some of the other spirits that are there and showed me the house. And I'm telling them everything, and they're like, no, it doesn't have a round driveway. It doesn't have the cellar doors here. So you're wrong. Okay. How'd that work out, Ryan?
I mean, they did make some changes to the house, but yeah, I didn't know much about remote viewing when I first met Dennis. I will tell you a story about his remote viewing skills. I got a message on Facebook from this girl. I guess she had heard my podcast, and she was like, a friend of mine in North Dakota has a problem with like spiritual activity in her house. Is there anything you could do to help her? Of course, I'm in Virginia, and I don't know anybody in North Dakota, but I knew Dennis he could remote view. And I took a shot in the dark. I'm like, well, I have a friend who may be able to help you. Let me talk to him. So I go over to his house and I ask him, hey, do you mind talking to this girl? At least maybe you can set her mind at ease. He can help, maybe give some advice. And he was like, yeah, just come over on Friday. We'll sit around the fire pit. I'll give her a call. So we go over there. I go over there. And we're sitting there and we give her a call. I hand her the phone, and Dennis proceeds to pretty much describe her entire house, like takes her through the house. And she's like, oh my God, yes, this is where it is. Okay, this is where the room is. This is where his dresser is or whatever. He knew exactly where everything was. Turns out her kid was seeing an old man, and it was scaring her son. But the old man was his grandfather, I think. So he told her, like, look, it's okay. He's just checking on him. And he told her what to do. And she's like, okay, I'll do it. About a week later, I get a phone call from the girl who messaged me, or actually a message from the girl who messaged me in the first place. And she was like, all right, my friend is freaked out. How did your friend know exactly where everything was? Like, he snuck in there and was like, he could tell where everything. He was like, how did he do it? I'm like, I don't know. I guess that's what remote viewers do. But she was honestly scared that he was able to see everything that he saw. I don't know if she thinks that he can watch her get undressed or something like that from Richmond, or
Look,
does this work like
that? I
that?
can't see you in the shower, so you're safe to scrub a little extra, and I won't say nothing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I was gonna say that because I know I when I hear from, and that's actually awesome story as well. But I hear from people who remote view, and that's always one of my questions is, would that person be able to remote view me at any given moment? Because obviously a lot of people would feel a certain kind of way about that. But I gotta ask you, Dennis, like if you were to, as we have about 2 minutes left before break, if you were going to describe the feeling of remote viewing to someone else who doesn't get it, how would you explain that?
I would say it's like kind of being in a dream. You are, let's say you're dreaming that you're in a haunted house, or you're in a museum, or you're in whatever the location, that what we call the target is. And you are, for lack of better terms, dreaming that you're there and you're walking through it. And on the occasions like Belnemus, where I had Washington that led me through it, it feels like you're just taking a tour, but you're physically wherever you are versus being at that location. But it's kind of like being in a dream state. Now, I see that Roger there and Cielo, Roger just mentioned Major Ed Dames. I'm not at his level. I am still learning it, but that would be how I would describe it. It's just like being where you're at, but seeing other things like you're watching a TV show or in a dream.
Yeah, I always point to, because like I say, I like to have conversations that include skeptics as well. And obviously, skeptics are going to have questions,
Oh, yeah.
as they should, right? As they should. And, when we talk about remote viewing, we can always point to the Project Stargate, where the government was actually using this as an actual tool, and they had enough reason to believe that there was something to it enough to fund it and run a whole program behind it, which who knows if they're still using it today. I say if it is an ability, which it appears to be, then of course, if it's something you could call upon, and we know the war minds of most nations out there, then why wouldn't that be a pretty powerful tool to have even current day? So with that being said, we have about 20 seconds before we go to break. Guys, this has been an awesome conversation so far here with Ryan Jones and Dennis Estlock of Cabin on 360. We're going to get to talking more about that, more paranormal stuff. So you guys don't go anywhere. Stay right where you're at, right here on the Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. See you guys back in just a minute. All right, we are clear. So we got about 5 minutes. We're still on camera. Everyone can hear us and see us. You guys can step away if you need to do anything within this time.
This was fun.
Yeah. We're just getting started. You guys, like I said, totally fan of Riff Nation. I tune in when I can over there. You guys are doing good stuff. Always good to have a place where you can kind of disseminate information. And I talked to Ed, and I know Ed's state of mind, and I know he's running the program over there. So anybody that's cool with Ed is cool with me in my book. Rhonda Harris, everybody over there included as well. And others that I haven't even met there yet.
I joined the Riff Nation back in December. I started my show back in 2014. So I've been doing this for about, let's start my 11 year anniversary is actually coming up on Tuesday.
Wow. Congratulations, sir.
Well,
Yeah.
Thank you. And been listening. Actually, I heard Dave Scott on Dave Strader's show. I guess the Paranormal 60, I think it was, and I'd never heard of Spaced Out Radio, and I enjoyed his interview so much. I'm like, I'm gonna check it out, and I've been a loyal listener ever since. So probably like 2 or 3 years now. I've been listening to Spaced Out Radio. Then I started listening to your show, and I saw Howie was on, and then Howie and Rhonda came on. So I'm very excited to be a part of this.
Man, that is awesome to hear. We're so glad to have you here. Like I stated, you guys, if you have not already subscribed over there at Riff Nation, go over and do so. I'm telling you, go over there. It's a lot of different shows they have. How many shows do you guys run over there currently?
Okay. So we have the Iran Effect on Sunday night. I think we have Beacon in the Otter's Den on Monday. And then Bag of Nuts at 8:00 on Tuesday. Then my show is on Tuesday at 9:00. And then Wednesday we have a show. I think Thursday and Friday are free. I think Wednesday's Beacon in the Dark. Friday is, I think, Susan Swanbeck. I forgot what it's called. And then on Saturday we have the Paranormal Outlaws, like once a week or once a month. And then I think Wednesday afternoon, Howie and I do a show called What's Going Down, and that's once a month every Wednesday. And then Thursday night, like second Thursday of the month. I'm sorry, trying to remember offhand. Second Thursday of the month, Howie, Rhonda, and I do the Freakin Awesome playlist, which is like a music show. So we kind of run the whole gamut as far as shows are concerned.
Yeah, that is great, guys. It's just endless content over there. So, guys, like I say, make sure you guys are over there subscribing. I'm sure someone will put the link in the chat here. And I know Ed has invited me back over and said we're going to take off the training wheels and we're going to do a full 2-hour thing. Ed told me that, and I'll wait for Ed to go ahead and get it set up. Ed is a cool guy, funny guy, really cool guy to talk to. And like I said, we've talked on this channel at least twice here. So he says indeed. I'll be looking forward to that there, Ed. Make sure you wear the hat though, man. You got the hat is branding, and that's your branding. In my eyes, when I think of Ed, I think of that hat. So that is actually pretty awesome. Jessica S, thanks for coming on in. Jerry Lahane, I see you out there. Dean P, thanks for showing up here tonight. Who else did we miss here? Ciela Azul, thank you for coming in.
Missed ethanol at roll call.
Say again.
You missed ethanol at roll call.
Ethanol. Okay, I can't do that. Ethanol. The ethanol. Thanks for coming on in. We appreciate you showing on up. And MJ as well. We got about 45 seconds left before we come back. Let me see. Anyone else? Thirsty as well. Kurt M. Going back. Yeah. There's ethanol. And who else do we have here? Looks like that's about it. All right, as we get ready to come back here in about 20 seconds.
And I'm going to jump on the line of questioning and commenting here with Deb from Sacramento on our return, if you don't mind, regarding the remote viewing.
What was the question?
Well, she's got, I suppose each person is unique in their remote viewing abilities.
Hold right there. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. Back with our guests here, Ryan Jones and Dennis Estlock, talking paranormal, Cabinet 360, paranormal experiences, and all of the sort as we go ahead and jump right back into the show. If you missed anything here, jump in our archives, absolutely free. YouTube.com/at Spaced Out Radio. As we get ready to get right back into the conversation, there was a comment here that was pointed out by one of our guests here, Dennis. And Deb from Sacramento stated, Dennis Estlock, I suppose each person is unique in their remote viewing abilities. Remote viewers that I've spoken to cannot do it, quote, on demand, so to speak. And you wanted to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much on demand, like the remote viewing aspect, but being a medium and being able to do remote viewing, I think I tap more into the mediumship aspect of it. Like, you know, I mentioned Belnemus Plantation. I was given a guided tour by one of the spirits there. So it's not a matter of, like, I can't just zoom in and look at, you know, this place or that place, just close my eyes and I'm there. I think I have to make a connection to the energies that are at that location to get me there. Now, I'm also working on mine, I'm developing. So I think, like you said, each person is unique in their remote viewing abilities, just like each medium is unique, or each gifted, I guess you want to use that term, is unique in how they do things.
Yeah, awesome. Glad that you addressed that. And yeah, for questions, guys, we also want to make sure that we put them in caps, and that way we'll ask them on the back end of our second hour here tonight as we go ahead and jump back into the conversation. So right before the break, you were talking about, you were describing to others what the feeling of remote viewing is like. And kind of getting more into now the mediumship side of it, right? So you're out doing paranormal investigations or visiting haunted places. Being a medium can definitely help in figuring out what type of energies you might be coming across. So what in your line or in your experience, based on the places that you've been, where has that ability to tap into mediumship have come into play? Where would be like some of the most helpful situations that it popped up in?
I would say more so in the keeping teams safe aspect. You know, if I know that there's a spirit there that's getting angry, that's getting frustrated, or that's a little more shy, a little more withdrawn, being able to connect with them through the mediumship helps in getting that spirit to either A, calm down, or B, step forward and actually interact. Now, sometimes it's just a matter of fight or flight. You know, spirit's going to do what they're going to do. But I think keeping the team safe is kind of one of the most important aspects of mediumship.
Now, Ryan, when you go out into the field, you know, and anytime I speak to a paranormal investigator, they'll always have a team of individuals. It's never usually just one person by themselves that does just all the investigating, because you need people like mediums and who specialize in other areas to be on your team. So, like, what does it mean to you to have someone that's a medium on the team? And then what other tools do you use when trying to figure out what's going on in some of these locations?
I think it definitely helps to have a medium on the team. I think it to be able to point out where certain, you know, which areas are more active, and it's really cool when they get a hit or they see something, and then you'll get a voice on the recorder. As far as what I like to use, I mean, I use my phone a lot because the recorder works great. I do use some of the apps that I know it's got kind of a bad reputation because they're phone apps, but when you get stuff, you hear a voice or hear a whole conversation that has to do exactly with what you're talking about in the building. It usually works very well at the cabin. So I will use the app sometime on my phone. But I will use a spirit box. Of course, EMF detectors, all the stuff that the teams usually use.
So when you look around, you know, and I brought this up with Rhonda, and Ed, and I bring this up all the time because we all, men of our ages, have definitely lived through a period in time where you had, you know, Cleo, Miss Cleo, and you had the whole wave of in the 90s with these psychic mediums in their. So there is a stigma already on this field as it is. How do you deal with skeptics who question the ability of a medium? You know, because for me as a host and as many people as I've talked to, I know that there's something to it. I film things myself, and so I wouldn't need convincing at all. But for a skeptic, like, what are some of the things that you bring to them or show to them? An open-minded skeptic who's open to interpretation. What type of stuff do you bring to the table for them to kind of say, hey, there's something to this?
Who was that one directed at, Rob?
You know, either one of you guys.
All right. I'll jump that one, Ryan.
All right, you got it.
So we meet skeptics every day. I mean, anytime that I say I do this or I do that, and if you say I'm a really good mechanic or I'm really good at baseball, there's going to be a skeptic. And in this, if I'm lucky, I can make a connection right there on the spot. If they have a spirit, you know, lost loved one or something, if I'm lucky, then it works out beautifully. I'm able to look them dead in the eye and go, look, man, Auntie June wants me to tell you this or that. And that squashes all of it right there. But the only thing that I can tell them if I can't make a connection right there on the spot is, you know what? I can't convince you of everything in this world. There are so many things in this world, and the mind is so powerful that science can't even quantify the ability of the mind. You're either going to believe it or not, and it's not going to hurt me either way.
Definitely. And do you feel like skeptics are wrong for, and not, this doesn't just have to do with paranormal, because they apply this to every part of this field of the phenomena. When skeptics step forward and they ask for proof, how do you feel about that? And then in your work, do you try to gather proof to add to the data set?
It's not truly my job to prove or disprove to them. I mean, I am a very firm believer that the universe is going to do what the universe is going to do. If they want proof, well, the universe is going to provide it at some point in time. You know, it may be a book flies off a shelf in from somewhere far away from me. It may be like my example where my granddaddy came to me at 7 years old. They're going to have a loved one pass, and all of a sudden they're going to go, holy crap, maybe that dude wasn't so crazy. Maybe there is something to this. There is something on the other side. And that's most of why I do what I do is, and I've said this at presentations often, I want to know what to look forward to when this meat suit dies. If we're all just energy, where does that energy go? So it's not my job to convince them one way or another.
That is awesome, actually, for you to say that, because, you know, as long as I feel like in this field that regardless what part of the field you're in, you should be doing it with a purpose in mind, with like an end goal. So moving that over to you, Ryan, like what would you like to have accomplished in this field by the time you just hang it all up, you know, and you do a retrospect on work done? What do you hope to have achieved by that time?
I want to help people understand the paranormal more. I mean, it seems to me the more we learn, at least the more I learn, the more questions I have about it. I want to make it less, for lack of a better, you know, people think paranormal, not so much anymore, but I think there's still a stigma attached to it. Like I said, not as bad as it was, but I would like to help bring it more to the mainstream, and give people who have, you know, paranormal issues, give them a place where they can talk about it, and they don't feel like they're crazy, like what Dennis was talking about earlier, like they're gonna bend a straitjacket. Or I know I'm not gonna get all the answers until I'm on the other side. So but yeah, just give people a place where they can feel comfortable talking about their experiences, and where people are more open to share their experiences, and see where it goes.
I agree. Great answer. Great answer. And you know, I always ask that because I feel like there should be a purpose behind the work that we do. There should be a reason why we do it. That usually ends up being to benefit others that may, you know, come across this issue at some time in their life. So both great answers there, and noble for having that perspective going into this. And it makes the work more fulfilling when you do gather things, or you have milestone moments you know, within your work life. So good stuff there. So kind of getting into the paranormal, if you had to describe what the paranormal was, and I think I talked to Rhonda Harris about this too, like what do you if what is that place where we're seeing, you know, I call it a realm essentially. What is that realm to you, if you were to describe it, where these shadow people are living, or these apparitions that we happen to see come in and come out of existence? How would you describe that realm? Is that technically, in your eyes, the afterlife, or is that like I almost describe it like a waiting area where some spirits or entities might be trapped in, maybe not trapped, but maybe just waiting or residing in until they cross fully over? If you understand what I'm talking about, what do you consider that realm? Is that the afterlife, or is that like some people call purgatory?
You can take this one, Dennis.
That one's above my pay grade, boss.
That's over my pay grade right there.
I mean, it's a very deep question. It's a really good question. I don't know if I would consider it purgatory. Some of the entities that we interact with, I mean, there's a theory in the paranormal that if that person is killed so abruptly that the spirit and the body are ripped apart so abruptly, they don't even realize what has occurred. And they are the ones that typically are more angry, more feisty, the upset ones, because they don't understand what's happening. Typically, the ones that we don't interact with that have passed before, they're the ones that have crossed over. Now, as a medium, I have interacted with the ones that have crossed over simply because their loved ones here want to know where they are and how they are. So they can come back and talk to us, I believe. But I think most of in the paranormal, those spirits that we're interacting with are just kind of in a limbo.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Not necessarily a waiting room, not necessarily the purgatory, but more of a, where am I? What is actually going on? And we have a perfect example, EVP, from, I mentioned Pamplin Historical Park earlier. It's a battlefield, and it was, tragic loss of life on this property. And I'm standing there with a voice recorder and 3 others. One being, he's here in the chat, is Banchero. And I simply made this statement, gentlemen, do you know you're no longer soldiers? The war is over. You can go home. And there's a voice on the recorder that sounds like a young male that says, are we dead? And in that moment, I learned so much from that one question and that one response. Here's this young man that's probably 165 years later that doesn't even know he's dead. And to me, that kind of firmed up the belief that when death happens so quickly, the body and the spirit are ripped apart so abruptly, the spirit doesn't even recognize that separation.
That is an awesome explanation. And actually, limbo was the better word I was looking for. Essentially, it describes exactly what I'm trying to say. So appreciate that. And then the being ripped from the body, the soul, so quickly that those apparitions or entities, or whatever you want to call them at that point, don't realize what has happened. That just resonates a lot better and makes a lot more sense when we talk about, just like you stated, the soldier who didn't realize that he was dead. And then maybe even not just soldiers, but just other entities that you come across. If you remember, like The Sixth Sense, right? The movie The Sixth Sense is kind of that same sort of thing where that person didn't realize that he was actually the one dead. And if that's a lot, and I'm glad that you pointed out that that's a lot more of the type of entities that you run into are those types. Do you find any difference geographically? And I ask this all the time as well. So I started out with, we know that the East Coast is way more historical as far as things that have happened, events where you're going to have a lot of additional energy out in that area. But have you done any work on the West Coast? And do you find one particular part of the country more of a hotspot than the other?
And I went to Missouri State Penitentiary and investigated there. So I'm part of a group called Haunted Nights Paranormal Events, and they travel around and they host events. And we did Mopin. And the spirits that were there, I don't think, honestly, were any different than the spirits that I interacted with when I got punched in the jaw at Moundsville Moundsville State Penitentiary in Moundsville, West Virginia. Spirit is spirit. And for lack of better terms, and I've said it 1,000 times, if you're a butthole in life, you're a butthole in death. The loss of that body doesn't get you a brilliant new attitude and personality. So I don't think geographics makes a difference in how spirit interacts. I think our life lessons, I think our personalities in life, I think where we are, what we were, all of those things change what you're like on that side. Just like the living, your life experiences, your education, your training, your values, the morals, all those things that we're taught as living people change who we are as a living person. I think that carries over into that side, and it doesn't matter where you're at geographically.
And what would be for you, Ryan, one of the creepiest encounters that you've had thus far in your investigations?
Okay, so I was inside the Brick Rancher on the Kavanaugh 360 property. I was by myself. I had left a recorder downstairs in the basement, and we had set up a fog machine downstairs and did the whole laser thing so you could see the shadows. I went downstairs to get a recorder, and the fog was still pretty heavy in the basement. And I'm walking, and I knew Dennis and whoever else was there was in the cabin, so I knew nobody was there with me. Go downstairs to the basement, and once we get into the rancher, you'll understand why this is creepy. I get downstairs. I'm looking around with my flashlight trying to find the recorder. And then I hear a woman's voice come up behind me and say, "Hey." And I was already nervous being there by myself to begin with. I didn't run up the steps, but let's just say I walked very fast up the steps, out the door, and I'm like, I'll get the recorder tomorrow when it's light outside. I don't need it that bad.
I hear you. That sounds like me. That sounds like about what I. First of all, everyone knows here that I wouldn't even be on that ghost investigation, period. But if I had to be, I'd be the guy standing in the back, making sure you guys are okay. But
Closest to the exit.
Exactly. I've had some experiences of my own, and I've filmed. Luckily, and I'll say this: I have a lot of receipts. Luckily, because they were just happenstance moments where I ended up getting receipts. But what do you think the shadow people are? If you had to describe what shadow people are, Dennis, I've shown my photo to people, and some paranormal investigators don't feel that it's paranormal at all. They feel maybe it's more extraterrestrial related. I don't know where they come to that conclusion, but for you, what would be your explanation of what shadow people potentially are?
I think first we have to narrow down, is it a true shadow person, or is it just a spirit that hasn't figured out how to fully expose themselves and present themselves? And the reason I say that, somebody, I think it was Deb that mentioned the movie Ghost earlier. Honestly, I think that movie was a lot closer to reality than even the writers thought. You know, when he's in the subway and he's trying to flick that bottle cap, there's a learning curve. And the other spirit that has been dead much longer walked over and goes, "You're doing it all wrong, man, like this." And he shows him. I think some of the spirits that are earthbound have figured out how to A, interact with us, B, present themselves, C, interact with their environment and the items. And then when you get into a true shadow figure, if we go on the theory that spirit can present itself any way it wants to, it's going to present itself however it wants. Now, if I want to be thought of as something that's big and harmful and that incites fear, most of us think shadow person. Automatically, they're thinking satanic. It's evil. It's absolute trouble, and they'll turn and run from that. So, you know, if I just want to be left alone, I'm going to present myself in what I think will terrify you to make you go the other way and just leave me alone. So I don't want to say that they're extraterrestrial, because to me that typically would not take a full human form or shape. And most of the reports that you get are saying that it looked identical to a human, whereas I don't believe if we truly were to see without question an alien life form, I don't think they would look like us, simply because this is really not the best. I mean, think about the configuration of our body. This is not the best form they could have created. There's so much more ergonomic forms than this. And if they're smart enough to get us here, or to get them here rather, then they have been around a lot longer than we have, where they're much smarter than we have, and they would have probably progressed to a point of evolution better than us.
And that's excellent. A great point to stop at as we go ahead and get ready to jump into the break. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, clear, and we are off camera for the next 5 minutes, guys. So see you in a minute.
Cool.
right, welcome back, everybody. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. As we are coming back from break, we are coming back from radio here in about 30 seconds here. This is hour 2, so I have been tagging some of your questions. If you have other questions for the guests, make sure they're in all caps so I can see them, and I will tag them. We will ask them the last 30 minutes of the show. Of the interview, as we have about 10 seconds left to go. Let's get ready to come back. All right, here we go. Right, everybody, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio after hour number 2 with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. Back with our guest. We are going to be talking now, second hour cabin after 360 with our guests here, Ryan Jones and Dennis Estlock. Don't forget, if you missed any of the show tonight, jump into archives absolutely free. YouTube.com/Spaced Out Radio. As we have a plethora of content, and we are going to jump right back into it. So before the break, we were talking shadow people and what they may or may not be, and you were making some points there, Dennis, on why it, in looking at it logically, why it wouldn't make sense for it to be extraterrestrial, showing itself in a human form, which would be number one. It should be a red flag. I didn't think of that, so that was awesome that you brought that up. Now, I did want to show the shadow person because I just showed all the paranormal investigators that come on the show. And for the radio audience, this is going to be an image of a shadow person at the end of the hallway at my home. And this was taken by my daughter. She had her phone set up on her door in a mount, doing her TikTok dances in the hallway. She went ahead and left it up there as she went to the restroom. Her friends are still on the phone FaceTime. They see something in the hall. They click the screen capture button. And when she comes out, they tell her something's in your house. Then they send her the image. And then this is what we saw. This is what we got. So I don't know if you can see that there. Let me go ahead and make that big here. Depicts a shadow person at the end of the hall. And let me go ahead and zoom in. And this is full figure. So the light sources in our house would not allow for this shadow to appear. Any of the lights that we have in the house wouldn't, if someone was standing, would not allow for this shadow to be there. And you can see the shadow literally touches the floor. So very intriguing photo that we have here. Now, if I'm sending this over to Ryan and Dennis, and I'm like, I don't know what else is going on here. I also have had phantom walking on the roof where it sounds like someone in boots literally walking across the roof at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. We've had phantom knocking where there's knocking and no one at the front door at all. Just all sorts of weird stuff like that. Plus orbs in our side house that we filmed on a Ring camera. So if I'm sending this off to Ryan and Dennis and I'm like, I don't know what this is, I need help, how would you guys approach this investigation?
Well, I would probably send you to talk to Dennis or Howie, because that is crazy. As far as that, I would definitely tell you to talk to either Dennis or Ed, because they're better explaining stuff like that than I am.
Do you get paranormal vibes from it when you see it? Because I had a paranormal investigator say it just doesn't feel paranormal, and said it actually felt extraterrestrial. Anything about the image do that for you, or what would you say?
So the first question I have for you on this one, Rob, is your daddy still alive?
He is.
Okay. Grandfather?
No.
Okay. Was grandfather passed when that shot was taken?
Yes.
Okay. Because the first thing I heard was dad. So it makes me wonder, is this, my first question, of course, was dad. Then we have to go back one more generation, so grandfather. The other thing that I pick up on is the bedroom that's to the right of that shadow figure, to the right of that entity. It's a bedroom over there.
Yes, that's a bathroom. That's actually where my daughter was
Okay.
during the picture being taken.
Well, can you bring the image back up for me?
Sure.
All right. So off to the left shoulder of that figure, off to his left shoulder, is that a bedroom that way?
So looking to the right as the image sits here.
Yeah,
Or
as
over-
it's on screen, the left shoulder of that image, or left side, like where you see the silver doorknob, around the corner to that side of that entity, is that a bedroom?
No, that's actually a living room space.
Okay, because I'm getting that's kind of that entity space. So you're hearing not boots just on the roof, you're also hearing walking in that hallway and around that corner, aren't you?
Not in the hallway. It has only been on the roof. It's only been on the roof, but the knocking, you're looking at the front door here. For people on radio, it's an image that looks straight down the hallway, and you're looking at a front door. In front of the front door is this shadow entity. So to answer the question there, yeah, this shadow was pictured right near the front door. This is where we also had the phantom knocking take place. The footsteps would have taken place off to my left as we're looking at the picture here and about 10 feet back. So in that general area within, I'd say 5 or 10 feet of that shadow is where the walking on the roof has taken place and also the phantom knocking.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely want to set up not just EMF but static detectors also. Watch that space for a little while, see what actually happens. Run a couple of EVP sessions through there and see if we can determine who it is. But that would be one of my first things. Running the EMF. Well, the purpose of EMF and static detectors, we don't know if spirit moves through EMF fields or through static fields. Additionally, let's take a hypothetical that it is a extraterrestrial life form. Would they emit? Because supposedly they work through our magnetic field for their propulsion system on their vessel, which means they've figured out our magnetic field. So would they not emit magnetics of some sort, electromagnetic fields perhaps? So there's so many things to it that, just to look at an image and go, how would you, I can tell you how I would start into it, and then it's going to kind of snowball and progress from there as to how I actually proceed.
Yes.
But those would be my first. Just let's get baseline readings. Let's see what we have in that area. I did a home for a family that they slept in separate bedrooms because her skin was breaking out. And it turned out that at the head of their bed on each side was a receptacle. And on her side of the bed, where she would have been sleeping if she hadn't moved into the guest bedroom, was a broken electrical wire that was emitting like off the chart EMF. And she was hypersensitive to it. I told them get an electrician and replace the electrical in that wall. And she felt 100 times better after that. And within weeks, her skin cleared up. So there are so many variables that to look at an image and say, well, this is exactly how I would do it. One, I would run from that investigator because they already have in their mind exactly what they're going to encounter, which means they've already tainted their mind on what they are going to report to you.
Right. The way I feel about this is, when we talked about your remote viewing, and so I've asked this question to other people as well, other remote viewers. I'm like, when you are remote viewing, it feels almost like astral traveling, right? Where your consciousness is going to these actual places. And then I wondered, I'm like, okay, well, if that's the case, because I truly feel that way, then how would you appear in those places? So to someone else in that scene, in the place you're visiting astrally or remote viewing, because there's been rumors that some people can sense themselves being remote viewed. And so if that's the case, is the person that is remote viewing them or astrally traveling to that particular place, do they show up themselves as shadow people? And that's one thing I was wondering. I was like, okay, could that technically be an astral traveler or someone that is remote viewed? Like, have you ever thought about that when it comes to shadow people?
That's a really cool thought too. And I hadn't thought about that. What do I look like when I do a remote view and I put my energy somewhere? You know, what did Washington think I looked like when I remote viewed that plantation? So that's a cool idea. And maybe that is what it is, because it looks to me like that figure is got their hands either in front of them or in their pockets, maybe, like they're just kind of there to observe, not to interact, but just to observe. So, I mean, that could be just the energy impression of somebody that's doing a remote view or an astral travel. That's a cool thought.
You know, and with that being said, and that's why I always run it by paranormal investigators, because it's always cool to get your, your thoughts on that as we try to unpeel the onion back, because that's kind of what I keep feeling like. The more that we discuss the different parts of this phenomena, it could be different things. It could be simply an apparition that I'm seeing here. It could be exactly what we talked about, maybe an astral traveler. It could be, I've heard from some people, it could be an ET cloaking itself. So there's just so many different options of what it could be, and it's always fun to talk about. Let me ask you this. So going into, because I kind of want to get into the Cabin 360 and just some of the experiences you both have had maybe together at this place, what would be one of the top experiences, or one that you would like to point out that you've had together at Cabin at 360?
That we've had together, or what was biggest and what was his biggest?
You could go individually, or one that you may have had together.
I mean, the one I told you about, the person saying hi to me, was the one that really like scared me, because I guess I was already nervous being in the house by myself. But there are so many experiences that we've had on the property. It's hard for me to pick one where it was like the best, because there, like I said, we've had so much stuff happen to us out there. It's hard to really pick just one. We've had a countless number of EVPs on the property. We've heard cannon fire. We've heard drumming in the woods audibly. One time we went to the Brick Rancher. Yeah, the horse and buggy. We have a gravel road beside the cabin, and we were sitting on the front porch. All of a sudden, we hear the clip clop of horse hooves and the wheels and of like wagon wheels, kind of going over the rocks, crushing the rocks. And I thought someone had, brought their car and taken the road down to the end of the road to maybe do some, heavy petting with their girlfriend or whatever. So I keep looking for the car. The car never comes, but you still hear you hear the horse and stuff. I'm like, wait a second, that's not a car. That's a horse. And we could hear it go right by the house, and then it just stops as soon as it gets to the end of the gravel driveway. We've had doors open and shut. We've had mimics where I was in the rancher with my friend Jason. We were about to set up to do an EVP session, and we hear Howie's voice. Well, Howie wasn't on the property. I'm like, and we were just talking about Howie, And then we go out and we hear him say something, and we're like, wait a second, the door never opened. We were here by ourselves. We look in the main room where we heard the voice, and of course there was no one there. So yeah, it's a lot of different experiences out there.
All right. And for you, Dennis, at the cabin, any one particular incident that just really freaked you out, or one that's very compelling?
Oh, most definitely. Every year we do a toy drive. Ever since Ryan and I started running this location, even before I became the owner of it, our goal was to give back to the community. So we've done a toy drive every year. Our first one was for a local called Henrico Christmas Mother. And this was what, Ryan, 9 years ago?
2017, I believe, was our first one.
But at that point in time, I drank. I don't drink anymore, not because of this, but at the end of the night, I'd had 3 or 4 beers, and I'm like, I'm not driving home. So I threw a sleeping bag on the loft that overlooks the downstairs. I threw a pillow against the railing, and I am a proponent of my Second Amendment rights. I carry sidearm at all times. Mm-hmm. So I had taken my weapon off, laid it by my shoulder, plugged in my phone. I had Pandora kicking, and I slide into the sleeping bag. I'm out. I wake up at some point because the music had stopped. And as I'm rubbing my eyes and, kind of clearing the cobwebs, standing at my feet is an older man with his arms folded across his chest, just staring at me. I learned a valuable lesson, man. If you're going to sleep in a haunted location in a sleeping bag, don't zip that up, because you can't get out fast enough. And I almost did something in that sleeping bag I would have been very embarrassed by. But I finally grabbed my weapon, and it had laser and flashlight on it, shook out of the holster, and he was gone just that instant. But we had a young lady later on got tagged and came out and tell us her stories there. And one of them was a suicide attempt. And she closed her story with the fact that, I remember my body being in the chair over there, and I was standing over here 6-8 feet away. I could see my body in the chair and a pool of blood on each side. I had hung my arms over the chairs, where chair arms. I had slit both wrists. And as I'm standing there looking at my body, an older man walked up beside me with an older woman beside him, and we looked at each other and looked at my body. I turned and looked back at him, and he said, it's not your time. You're not ready. You have to go back now. And our description of this older man matched. But that was definitely the most scared I have been, was the simple fact that there is this man standing at my feet, and I've locked eyes with him. He's now, 5.5, 6 feet away from me, standing over me, and I'm trapped in this hot dog casing. Mm-hmm. I don't zip my sleeping bag anymore if I sleep in it in a location.
I'm with you on that. I'm not sure what a sidearm would do against one of these guys, but I guess you might as well try, right? Try something. Is kind of how I would look at it. Now, looking at this, do you guys use any sort of tools, right? Because I have my guy Drew Banky, who you both met before the show. We will be talking later, and I'm sure he'll want me to bring this up. Dowsing rods and pendulums. Like, do you use any sort of equipment, like, I guess maybe triggers is what they would be, things that would trigger maybe activity or read activity, like dowsing rods? Some people use pendulums, things of that nature.
I've got a pendulum board. I've set my pendulum up. I do have faith in it because it can't be manipulated from an outside source. It requires energy to move it. And if nobody is touching it, then it's kind of unexplainable. You almost have to lend that movement to paranormal. Paranormal is simply anything out of the normal. And a pendulum that is hanging from a hanger, untouched, no breeze, and it's moving to your request, that's definitely out of the normal. As far as dowsing rods, we have had numerous guests on site use them. I'm not going to lie, I am very skeptical of dowsing rods if I'm not the one whose hands they are in, because it takes the slightest little twitch or the slightest little muscle movement to get a reaction out of them. If I'm using it, I know what I am doing. I'm not going to try to pull any BS. And I think everybody that's ever investigated with me knows that if nothing happened, I'm sorry, there just wasn't anything. But, Ryan and I we've been accused of having all kinds of tricks, and we don't. It just is what it is. Spirit's going to do what it's going to do. And if it happens, it happens. Great. But yeah, with pendulums, and we've even used the Ouija board in the house. There's currently a couple of Ouija boards in the house. So, and one thing that we're going to start doing, I've had suggested to us, man, you really ought to try table tipping in there. I think it would work great. So we're going to introduce that and see how it goes.
You've had seances too in there as well.
And would you describe table tipping? I've never heard that term before.
Table tipping is typically an older style table it's a center base that comes down to 3 leg points. The guests sit around it and they just touch their fingertips to the bottom edge of the table itself. And they're asking spirit to tip the table one way or another for responses. Usually the table is heavy enough that just with your fingertips, you can't lift that table. Is it a way that there could be some BS behind it? I guess there could if you got super strong fingers. But for the most part, not really. It's going to be what it is. But you're asking spirit, can you lean the table towards this guest or towards that person? This is yes, that is no, et cetera, et cetera.
That is cool that you call out, and I always applaud people that call out BS, right? So in pointing to where there could be BS within an investigation, because you have a lot of people out there that, and I say this all the time, but it should be said every day, is that there are a subset of people who just believe anything that's said without needing any sort of verifiable proof. They'll just run with it and they'll go with it. So it's cool to, be in a field like this and still have that skepticism to point out and say, hey, that could be faked. That could not be faked. And, it's always good to see that. And I'm always hopeful when I hear someone say that. I do want to ask this. Actually, we're getting ready to go to a break, but I want to jump into consciousness, because I think consciousness ties the entire phenomena together. And I think some of what is being experienced, obviously remote viewing and things of that nature, may actually be a part of consciousness. And I don't know how you feel about that, but we'll jump into that right after the break here. Let me see. Where can they find you guys? You might as well plug your show here.
Well, you can find me, Ryan C. Jones, on Facebook. You can follow the Freakin Awesome Paranormal Show on Facebook. We are live every Tuesday night from 9 to 10 p.m. on the Rift Nation Network on YouTube.
Okay, cool stuff. So, guys, make sure you guys are going to subscribe over there as we get ready to go to break and come back with the last 30 minutes with our guests here, Ryan Jones and Dennis Estlock of Rift Nation, totally freaking awesome podcast, and more. You guys don't go anywhere. Go get your popcorn if you leave. If you leave, come back, and we'll see you right back here on the After Hours radio show right here on Spaced Out Radio. See you in just a minute.
Good grief, man. Time has rocketed.
It has really gone by so fast.
All right, we are crystal clear, and we're on a 5-minute break. Everyone can still see and hear us. And yeah, no, time has definitely been flying by. That's when you know you're having fun. You guys have been great so far. I do appreciate you guys. And also, we do have some questions on deck. And this is where we will be asking questions from the audience. So, audience, if you have any more questions, please put them in caps. I have saved the few that I've seen come through, and we'll continue from there.
The cabin itself, the property itself has a pretty dark history, and that's probably the reason why it's so active. It's very nondescript. If you think about, he was talking earlier about when he was talking about how I tried to get him to come out for like a year, and he was hesitant because he was like, him being, Dennis, because he didn't think there was anything to it, because it was just a random log cabin that my grandfather had actually built.
Right. Ryan, let's do this. I want to save this for when we come back from break. So we'll start off this right here.
Perfect.
All right. And let's see. Tamoth Man, I see you just showed up. You're late, but that's okay. Thanks for coming on in. Tamoth Man, also Plaid Koala. Didn't see you here before, but I see you now. Thanks for coming in. Hillbilly Herb, where's the popcorn? I don't know. It's in the cabinet, maybe. Go ahead. You got about 3 minutes left. You can go ahead and get a good batch popped real quick. Let's see who else is out there. We have Dead Fish Cheese Spread. Appreciate you coming on in. Fast Timmy, I see you out there. Let's see who else has come in late to the conversation. Sierra, you were there before, but I just feel like saying your name. Hey, Sierra, thanks for coming on in. Let's see who else. Yeah, and I like this idea. Carl Bittner has the right idea. If you haven't already done so, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and if you like, ring that notification bell, because we go live 7 days a week right here on Spaced Out Radio. There's always something to watch right here, so definitely do that. And let's see. Blue Cruise, you snuck in there too. Thanks for coming on in. Glad to see you here tonight. And yeah, we're gonna get these likes up. And it might be might need to refresh it fast, Timmy. I'm not sure. I can't see from my end, but let's get these likes up. Let's take a moment here. We got 2 minutes left. If you haven't done so, let's stop right now. Go out of the show or click the screen and hit that like button, and let's get those likes all the way up as high as we can get them. And let's see.
I'm going to throw a shout at Coleman and Chris Banchero, and somewhere in here is actually one of our team members is Martha. So I'm going to throw a shout to them. Thank y'all for tuning in.
Yep, definitely. We appreciate them as well. And let's see. Corey has stepped in the building. I do see you, Corey. You the man, it's Rob G. Right back at you, Corey. Thanks for coming on in. We appreciate you showing up here tonight. And let's see. All right, we are looking good. We've got about a minute and a half left. Okay. Gory Tiger, I see you there. Appreciate you showing up. Magneticus. Buzzer beater, Marsha. Appreciate you showing on Magneticus. Thanks for coming in with the reference that you have to be a certain age to understand. Let's see. Okay. And do appreciate all the awesome support tonight, Deb from Sacramento. Thanks for the awesome super chat. Also, we had one from Welcome to the Show. Thank you for your support as well tonight, as we have about 20 seconds left before we come back. And yeah. All right, 10 seconds. And here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio, after hour 1.5 on the back half of the second hour with our guests here, Ryan Jones and Dennis Estlock, talking cabin on 360, plus a lot more. If you missed anything, which if you're coming late, you have, jump in our archives, youtube.com/@SpacedOutRadio. Catch yourself up on what you missed. As we go ahead and get right back into the conversation. And this is where we ask audience questions, but I did want to start off first with Ryan, who during the break, you were kind of going into what the history was behind. You said there's a dark history that pertained to Cabin at 360. You were kind of going into that, if you wouldn't mind doing so.
Well, I'm going to get it back in the Wayback Machine here. When I was younger, probably a teenager, I remember sitting at my dinner table and my dad telling me a story about the Brick Rancher on 360, which I had maybe been to once or twice. I'd been to the cabin with him to pick up a rent check or something like that. And he was telling me that the house next door, back in the late 70s, there was a young girl who was killed in that house. And he told me that he had to go meet up with the police, and he helped move her body into the body bag. So that's pretty much all I got from him. So fast forward to when I started doing the paranormal. I knew we had these two houses which were empty at the time. And I told Howie, I'm like, look, we have these two houses, and I told him about what had happened. I'm like, I don't know if they're haunted or not, but I do know that there was a murder that took place in the house. So I'm like, well, we can use the house as a training ground for our new recruits or our new team members. So we set up an investigation, and the only day that they could do it or do the investigation was, I think I had some family thing I had to go to, so I couldn't stay around for it. So we go set everything up. They start the investigation, and apparently all hell broke loose during the investigation. People were scratched. One girl was pushed on the steps. One of the mediums broke down in tears. It got so bad that Ed had to pull the team out after about, I think, 2 hours, and they were planning on being there all night. So I talked to him. He told me everything that had happened, and I was surprised because I had been in the house by myself and nothing had happened to me, but I wasn't looking for it either. And I told, like, back then, before I was actually into a group, I'd work in the house. I'd clean it up if it needed to be cleaned. But I'd always be very respectful to the spirits. I'd be like, oh, don't bother me, but I didn't know if there were spirits there or not. I just wanted to be on the safe side. So I'd be like, hey, I'm just here doing my work. Don't mess with me, please. Nothing ever happened. So when what happened with Howie really surprised me. Fast forward a year when I was able to get Dennis to come out. Of course, he told the story about us walking through the front door and him telling me what he said. But we still didn't have all the information about what happened in the house. And once we found that out, we knew that this place was seriously messed up. What happened was the whole story is a young girl named Melissa Elliott was getting ready for school. It was October 4th, 1979. Her brother, who had just done a line of coke, came into a room and told her to hurry up because they're going to be late. She's getting dressed. She gets mad, starts pushing at him, telling him to get out, starts yelling at him. He blacks out. He says when he woke up, he found her laying on the floor, and there were 2 gunshot wounds in her chest. He, of course, freaks out. He goes and sits down in the chair in the living room. He'd used his father's gun to shoot her, raped her. He realizes he needs to hide the body, so he finds a refrigerator box, and he takes her, puts her in the box, drag her 75 to 100 yards behind the house. Well, my grandfather had sent 2 workers to do some work behind the house. Like now it's very wooded, but back then it was more open, more field. So they were going to do some bush hogging behind the house to clear up some of the tall grass. They find the box. They go to move it, think it's just going to be an empty box. They tug at it and realize there's something inside. They open the box up. They find her half-clothed body in the box. So needless to say, they're freaked out. They go and they call the office. Well, it was still pretty early, so my dad was the only one at the office at the time, or in the office at the time. So he's the one who has to drive to Mechanicsville. Now, the people, the men who my grandfather had sent to the house were very dark-skinned African Americans. He told me when he got there, they were white as ghosts. They were so freaked out. He had to meet the police. He talked to police, and he helped, like I said, helped move the body into the body bag. There's a darkness about the rancher that people can feel when they walk through the front door. And it's not just what Dennis felt. People who had never been there, people had never heard, like they were just never knew the history of the buildings. They walked into the rancher and they're like, yeah, this place is seriously messed up. There is a dark presence in the basement. We don't know what it is, but one of Melissa's friends had told us before the incident that Randy, that's the name of the brother, had spent an awful lot of time downstairs in the basement. And we've had investigators in the house, especially in the basement. They change. They get really angry. Like people will start crying for no reason. We had one investigator to come with his wife and kids, and they've been investigating for probably 30 years. Never had a problem. It was one of those investigations where everything goes wrong, and the more stuff went wrong, the more upset or angry the father would get. It got to the point where his wife looked at him and she was like, we deal with this stuff all the time. Don't let it get to you. And he actually wanted to punch her in the face. And he was like, I've never raised my hand to my wife or my child. I've never wanted to. But in that instance, I just lost control. And he got out the house and he was okay. But there's something in there that can affect people who are there for like maybe like public investigations. We're in the house for maybe an hour at a time. But it makes me wonder if Randy is living there and there's something dark in that house. Could that have egged him on or maybe contributed to him blacking out or him being so angry that he ends up killing his sister?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the energies, you can transfer energy by just smiling to someone. You can brighten up their day, or you can make them have a crappy day, depending on the energy that you put out. So I could see how that could definitely be a thing. And that actually was going to go into the question that I had next, which was, Dennis, do you think that that paranormal energy can become directly physical, or is it done in the nature that Ryan just described, where maybe the energy possesses, for a better word, someone, and then that way that energy is able to affect the physical? So do you think it can directly affect the physical, or does it need to channel itself through a physical person in order to affect the physical?
I think that purely depends on the entity in question. Uh, you know, I think some can physically alter their environment, throw books, knock things down, scratch people, hit people. And some can only play in the human psyche. The human psyche is nothing but, as was commented earlier, the consciousness. And if spirit is nothing more than energy, then they can manipulate the consciousness, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever is in that basement, in all honesty, I think it's an elemental. I think it's ancient. It's been there for a very long time. And I think it has figured out that its strongest suit is to alter the conscious of those around it, and it's going to pick who it thinks, in my best definition anyway, or from what we've seen, who it thinks can inflict the most harm. It doesn't pick on the small, frail ones. It picks on the larger people. It picks on those that it believes can inflict the most damage. I mean, there's an EVP captured. I asked one time, are you the dark energy that caused Randy to rape and murder his own sister? And I got a deep, gruff yes back on the recorder. Well, I mentioned Twisted Paranormal Society. They shoot a Paraflix series called The Twisted Realm. And one of their investigators, Tana, asked the question, why did you do that? Why did you cause Randy to harm his own sister? And that same deep, gruff voice replied, the violence. So I think it thrives and feeds on that energy, that emotion, and causing chaos and violence, I think, is what its end game is, its goal.
Yeah. So negative energies, and I'm sure we'll be able to get into that a lot more. We'll have to set up another appearance for that. We got about 10 minutes left here. Let me go into a few of the audience questions. Yes, this one, Deb put out the super chat, so let me bring her up. She's asking, do you feel there's a difference between Christ consciousness and people who accept Jesus into their hearts and lives?
I had this conversation just a week ago that even the strongest atheist, now I ran ambulance for a couple of years, and the person that I was speaking with ran ambulance and fire service for several years. And we've both been to numerous fatalities or, crashes where that crash victim or whatever they were a victim of, we knew they weren't going to survive. And I have yet to interact with one that didn't ask for God. So I think there is, quote unquote, those who accept and those who are, I'm not exactly sure what Christ consciousness descriptor or definition is, but I think in our hearts, all of us know that there is a greater being. I don't care what you call it. You can call him Vishnu. You can call him whatever, God. You can call it Great Spirit. But all of us understand that there is a greater being. So I don't think when the proverbial defecation hits the oscillating propeller, I don't think there's a difference.
Yeah, and to kind of clear this up, Christ consciousness, as Deb says, the person who asked the question is a New Age term for morality, like living as Christ would have lived, essentially. And with that being said, let me see. Next question is from Sierra, asking, do people who vibrate at a lower vibration attract lower spirits that whisper to them?
I don't know that the vibration that somebody is at makes much difference in the energy. I think if we look at it that way, then everybody that's of a depressive state or everybody that's in a just low state of mind, they're going to attract a darker entity, I think, just given the fact that darker entity can and will try to take advantage of that person's low point in life. You're also going to have the higher beings, angels, guides, guards that all try to step up and help you through those deep moments. So if you're at a low vibration, I think you're going to get the lower spirits that are trying to capitalize on that darkness that you're already in, but you're also going to get the light ones that are there just to back you up, support you, and strengthen you in your endeavors. I think it goes both ways.
I can see that. And I don't know if you want to pick this one up, Ryan. Carl Bittner is asking, is there ever contact with spirits from long ago, say 800 years? So do you think?
Yeah, I've talked to, I've had guests on my show from England, and they live in haunted houses that are 800 years old or 700 years old. I don't know about around here. So I'm guessing if you get a spirit of like a Native American, it could be from 800 years ago. But I think I guess time doesn't really matter as far as paranormal or spiritual is concerned. So I would definitely say yes, there is definitely contact with spirits from 800 years ago.
And I guess it also depends on the whole limbo thing and how long entities choose to stay there. If you have the older energies from 1,000 years ago that are still in that limbo place, if that limbo place is what we're mostly interfacing with, I guess would be part of the equation. But I guess it's still something we're all trying to figure out at the end of the day. But we had another question here from MJ asking, have you guys ever been to a farm called Brundage Farm in Gainesville, Virginia? Saying that
I have not
lived there. Nope. Okay. And Scott Rosen is asking, how effective is black tourmaline or sage against an evil entity? if you've had any experience with that.
I mean, sage has been used for hundreds of years by the natives and you know, what we now call Native Americans, but we know as well as anybody else, the Indians have used that for hundreds of years. But there is also the belief that it doesn't matter what you're burning, it's the intention behind what you're doing. As far as black tourmaline, it's great for a little bit of protection in yourself if you are charging it, if you are treating it right, because it is supposedly a repellent. But I think a lot of times it's more so where your mindset is. Like anytime I do a cleansing and blessing on a home or a person, I'm automatically asking them to believe in what we're doing and trust that this works. And that's not so much to help it work. It's more so psychosomatic to help them put their energy behind it, because if you believe in something, you can achieve it. We're taught that our whole lives. So I think the intent behind it is just as critical as what you are using.
All right.
All right, Roger. Thanks for tuning in.
Great answer there. Great answer. And with that being said, let's kind of get into where do you guys both hope to see the paranormal research? Where do you hope to see it grow into as far as maybe things, tools that are used in the field? Like what would be a perfect scenario for something that isn't developed yet, as far as like your dream device to use out there in the field?
The red phone from the dead to the living.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the dream device, isn't it? Hey, so listen, I'm Bob. I was killed in a car crash about 75 years ago, and this place really sucks. But I want to tell you about something. I mean, that would be great.
Yeah.
But I think until we figure out how they communicate, we really don't know what direction to go with our equipment. So most of the equipment that we have now, like I said, the belief is that somewhere between electromagnetic fields and static fields is where energy is able to move, and that's what spirit moves through. But we don't know. So I mean, if there was a dream tool, it would definitely be the red phone between the dead and the living, and I don't think we'll ever get that.
I like that. I like that. The red phone, Ryan, would you agree with that? Or what would be the perfect tool that you would create if you had the ability to do so?
I would like to have a phone, like go to the phone, but I'm going to be a little bit, take a little bit farther. The iPhone or the iGhost, where you could take your phone, turn on the camera, and you could see spirits, and they would talk to you and actually talk to almost like a FaceTime with the ghost.
That would be nice. I could see that too. Very hopefully, and we look on Star Trek and Star. We had tablets way ahead of the time, and so who knows? This might be something, because I do believe at times when we see those things, we're peering into another spectrum or dimension that we cannot normally see, and I think that that's the thing. We have about 30 seconds here. If you guys can tell everybody once again where they can find you at.
Catch me at Dennis Estlock on Facebook. The Cabin on 360 Facebook page. There's also the cabinon360.com, TCO360 for an easy key. Ryan's rolling. I think we've got our Instagram up. We've got a TikTok up. Most of the socials. So,
all right.
Yeah, check us out on TikTok, Instagram. Give us a like, and follow us on all those social media pages.
All right, and we will do that. Thank you so much, guys, coming in. I'll have you back again. We'll do this for sure again. Once again,
Awesome.
everybody, give it up for our guest tonight, Dennis Estlock, Ryan Jones. I will see you guys back for hour 3. Don't go anywhere.
Conversations that move the needle.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio. You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming. I have to play a commercial. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Having a good night.
Yep. Welcome back, Spaced Out Radio, after hour number 3 already. After hour number 3. Can't believe it. The show is going so fast. Thanks to our guests here today, Dennis Estlock and Ryan Jones of Riff Nation. And shout out to everybody and all the work they're doing over there. Here we go. Coming back for commercial right now. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio after hour number 3. Numero tres. The last hour of the night here, as we go ahead and get into some great stuff. Thank our guests here, Ryan Jones and Dennis Estlock, a Cabin at 360. Guys, if you missed any of that conversation, jump into your archives, youtube.com/SpacedOutRadio. We have awesome stuff to offer there. Make sure you hit the subscribe button as well, as we go ahead and get ready to jump into our Steve Stockton Tells Untold and Missing Person Mysteries. Once again, we love that Steve Stockton is a part of this show. And shout out to Steve Stockton and everything he's doing over there. Make sure you go subscribe. Here we go.
Welcome to Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries on Spaced Out Radio's After Hours. My name is Steve Stockton, and I'm here to take you on a journey of mysteries, legends, and true stories. Come, join me on this strange adventure of Tales Untold and Missing Person Mysteries. I grew up in the rural woods of the Midwest. My grandparents had a cabin on 160 acres in the Ozarks, and my family home was in the woods of Ohio. I now live out west in a large city with my husband and kids, but his family has a cabin in northern Idaho where we spend a lot of time in the summer. That's where this all took place. So when I say I know the woods, I really do. This happened a few years ago, in the middle of summer. We had arrived at the cabin only to realize my husband somehow had totally spaced and forgot to pack my hiking boots. I was livid because all I had on were cheap flip-flops, and I'd been so looking forward to hiking that weekend. It kind of put a sour mood to the evening, and we settled in. The cabin isn't much, and though in the woods, it's part of a community or a cluster of other cabins. The one perk to ours is that it's right against a large field surrounded by woods. It's private property, and there's some weird stories and history with the family that owns it, but that field is mostly abandoned. We have a 4-foot barbed wire fence that runs the length of the field to separate our land from that. It's not too far from the cabin. I'd say maybe 20 feet from our porch to the fence line. That night after dinner, I made up the air mattresses for the kids, folded out the sofa bed for us. Soon everyone else was asleep, but since I have horrible insomnia, I was still up around 2 a.m., reading my Kindle and sipping wine, when I heard the most god-awful noise. I slipped my flip-flops on and poked my head out the front door. There was a sound coming from the field. I stepped out onto the porch to listen more intently. It's the sound of a coyote being hurt. At first, I thought possibly it was stuck in a trap, and I got so angry. My husband's family are known for our dogs, and the idea someone was trapping near us made me so angry. I cannot tell you how or why, but every cell in my body was screaming for me to help it. I ran inside to get a flashlight. It was a new moon, so zero light outside. And once again, found myself upset I didn't have my boots. There was no way I was going to make it even to the fence line in my flip-flops. Between the woods and terrain, it was happening near the corner of our property that can best be called a trash heap. An abandoned camper, a wood pile, metal drums for burning, etc. I had no idea what I could even do to help, but I just so badly felt like I had to do something. So I went back outside, and all I could do was listen. The more I listened, the more I realized it was being attacked by something. And that's when the hair on my neck stood up. I realized everything was dead quiet. I have never before or after heard the woods like that. Whatever was attacking the coyote was also doing it silently. No snarl, no bark, or yip, no growl. And as I stood there frozen and listening, I heard the final noises as the coyote died. I had tears in my eyes because it was such an awful sound. As soon as it died, I was hit with the force of the sounds around me. Suddenly, the neighbors' dogs were howling and barking. The bugs and crickets started up. It was like a switch had been flipped. It went from no sound to all the sounds in the blink of an eye. And that's when I heard the footsteps. Whatever had attacked the coyote was suddenly on our side of the fence. It was walking along the fence line, and it clearly was bipedal. I cannot stress this enough. I grew up in the woods. Humans and animals sound different, and this sounded human. It was clearly walking on two legs. I kept staring along the line, trying to see whatever it was. But as the footsteps grew closer to the middle of the property, and I still couldn't see anything, I panicked and ran quickly back into the cabin. I locked the door and grabbed a hatchet and woke my husband up. I couldn't believe he was able to sleep through everything. He hadn't heard a thing. The next morning, we went directly to where I told him the sound was coming from, the attack, but couldn't see anything. Though the field at that time of year is like 4-foot tall grass, and we didn't expect to see anything, and I was not about to hop the fence to go looking for trouble. I will say I had never been so thankful to not have had boots that weekend, because without a doubt, I would have tried to hop that fence that night. I just know I would have. Something in me was screaming out to make it stop. Anyway, I'm sure this is rambling a bit, but I felt so alone on this for years. My husband believes me, but, we have no logical answers. Thank you. Anonymous. My story of little people. My story occurred in Jedito, Arizona. This incident occurred during the summer of 1983 when I was 11 years old. I remember I was 11 years old because that's the summer my father quit racing horses and started staying home. So this particular evening, I went for a walk with my siblings and my two dogs. My dogs would always be way ahead of us in the woods somewhere chasing squirrels or something. I was ahead of everyone too, trying to beat them to the hill. Right before the hill, there's an old house down in a little valley. As I was walking past the old house, I saw something move out of my peripheral vision to my right. So I looked to my right, down at the ground. I saw small people, about 10 of them, maybe more. They all stopped in their tracks and stared at me in shock. I was in shock too about what I just came upon. I remember they were about a foot tall, with black short hair, maybe shoulder length and bushy. They were all naked, no clothes on, but they had no private parts, so I don't know if they were all males. Two of them were carrying a can, which was a Spam can. One was in front and the other was in back, carrying the back end of the can. Those were the ones I spotted first, and then I saw the rest. They all were carrying something in their hands. They all had long, skinny arms and long, skinny legs. As I started walking towards them, they all dropped what they had in their hands and ran together toward this single area by a big sage bush. One by one, they all sank into the ground. I stopped in my tracks too when I saw them going into the ground. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. When they'd all gone into the ground, I ran to the same area and started digging. I dug out sand about a foot deep, but I couldn't find anything. That particular area is sandy because the water runs through there when it rains. As my siblings walked up to me and asked what I was doing, I told them what I'd just seen, and I showed them the small footprints and what they'd left behind. I went back there every day for the whole summer, but I never saw them again. I even sat on a big boulder nearby and watched if they would come out. Never did. My family still owns that land, so when I go there, which is once in a great while, I go by and check for footprints. Nothing yet. I will never forget what I saw that day. I'm glad I got to experience something so incredible like that. I'm glad my dogs never came upon them because I don't know what would have happened. I've never told my story to anyone before. Only my parents, my siblings, my husband, and my kids know about my experience. My father told me to stay away from them as they're a part of Mother Earth too. I don't remember what he calls them. He said it in either Spanish or Navajo, so I don't remember. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. Renee.
All right. Once again, Steve Stockton tells Untold Missing Person Mysteries. We obviously thank and appreciate Steve Stockton being a part of the After Hours radio show right here on Spaced Out Radio. Now it's time to go ahead and jump into the After Hours wrap up with our guy, Drew Banky.
You're an evil monster!
Come here, I'm gonna eat you! Get in my belly!
Kick him in the nard! He doesn't have nard! Do it! Wolfman's got nard! You're a monster!
All right, the After Hours wrap up with none other than this guy right here, Drew Banky. Drew, thanks for joining us here this evening. How are you? How have you been? And what do you think about the show tonight?
It's very interesting. A lot of stuff being talked about. The cabin stories were freaky, to say the very least. The origins of them, and all that. Talking about how the gentleman, how the guy, raped his family member and all that, and dismembered him, and that was just crazy. But yeah, talking about shadow people, that hit home, because I've had my experiences with shadow people, and I have my thoughts of why they come, in the outline of a human, to show us the connectedness. Everything's a message, in our 3D, and especially when we have moments like that. So yeah, there's a lot of things that hit home about it, but that was some key points that really stuck out, especially the shadow people stuff. But the paranormal is not my expertise. I'm not a ghost hunter, and that's not really my expertise, but it's always interesting to hear it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, because when you look at it, and under the thought process that we have here, is that it's all related to phenomena. Excuse me. So when we talk about shadow people, entities, apparitions, energies, it ties all back into the consciousness thing, which is what we always talk about anyway. And one thing to point out, interesting, right, is that I always ask paranormal investigators and mediums in general, because they are able to kind of feel the energy and the presence when they're there. They're usually the one that makes the connection. So, I always try to see if there are positive and negative energies out there. And, that's essentially what he said there, as far as the whole event that happened at the house, one of the horrific incidents that happened there. And so you kind of have this maybe evil or dark energy that's always there. They kind of, if you want to say it, maybe possesses or kind of seeps in, or almost directs a person to a dark place while in the presence of said energy. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I've always wondered if there was a difference, like if you could really feel that as a medium going into a place, like, hey, is this a good energy? Is this a good, spirit that I'm dealing with? Or is this I don't even know if you call it a spirit when it's a dark energy. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I don't like to get into labels, because one person to the next, that's going back to where you're talking about how everything is connected in this way. I totally agree on that. And, depending on one person's perspective to the next, they might have a different label on it. So dark energy, lesson to be had. I don't know, whatever, there's several different ways to look at devil, demons. Depending on who it is, they could call it so many different things. But anything that's been dark in my life, it's always manifested into some type of lesson that's better than me in the long run. So therefore I can honor that.
Yeah, like I said, there's within the universe, there's a yin and a yang. There has to be dark, light, fire, water, fire, ice, rather. And so, when it comes to energies, you would assume that there is opposites there as well. And someone was asking, or we were talking about if it's something that you attract, like is someone with the lower, and we always say low frequency. I know people get tired of hearing the word frequency because it's like the tag word in consciousness today. But for better, define a better word, just frequencies, if you're on a lower vibrational wavelength, let's do that wavelength. If you're on a lower vibrational wavelength versus a higher vibrational wavelength, it seems to me that depending on where you're at, you attract those sort of like frequencies or like wavelengths. So in my circle, I have a lot of people who, the energy I project, I feel those people project the same energies back at me. So it's almost like a living example of those energies do attract like energies. And I know if I was a negative Nancy walking around here, always looking at doom and gloom and negativity, that I might attract those sorts of energies, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that.
I totally agree. Have you ever noticed, like, when you stub your toe, or stub your toe or bump into something? It's never when you're in a great mood. It's when you're frustrated. It's when you can't find your keys or running a little late and you stub your toe. Pay attention to it. Just these small things, and that translates into the larger picture. Like, I mention it pretty much every time I have a chance to talk about the quantum entanglement's real. Like, and we, if that's not just a theory, that's a reality that we're living in. So everything is connected. And when we're talking to someone back and forth, like, your vibe attracts your tribe, or whatever you want to call it, but it's real, but yeah, just that one simple fact. Like, I'm always frustrated when I stub my toe, and it just adds to my frustration, or something like that, or I'm running late for something, or I'm trying to find my keys or something like that, and I bump into something or bump my head. It's never like when I'm in a super good mood, and everything's going right. I never I never stub my toe then.
Yeah, okay, that's a good way to put it, because I'm thinking of times where it's happened to me, and yeah, it's usually I'm in a rush or I'm just like moving too fast. And
Yeah.
truthfully, when I stub my toe, I sit there for a moment, because it takes a second for the pain to kick in. It takes like 5 seconds, and then it just slams you. So I sit there for those 5 seconds and then just think about how silly I was for moving so fast. And okay, here comes the pain. Ow. Right.
Yeah.
That's how I do it every single time now, because it's like I was moving too fast. It's my fault. Let me wait for the pain to kick in. Ouch.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay, now let's get past it.
Yeah, but just break it down as as everything is happening for a specific reason, and nothing's coincidence. So you stubbing your toe, that's exactly what it did. It make you slow down. Like, we really should get into. I really wish calling out anyone that has a QHHT level 2 practitioner or something like that. We need to get them on the show and have them talk about the teachings of Dolores Cannon, how they talk about everything that happens. Like, if you have a scar or tattoo, everything that's on your body, and depending on what quadrant it is, it's this lifetime or past lifetimes, all this stuff, like, all of it's a message. All the way down to stubbing a toe or anything like that, it's all a message. We should get into that, the QHHT.
Yeah, send me some names and stuff on that because I'm actually doing some booking right now as we speak for the month of February. And we actually have a pretty awesome lineup coming up here, uh, for the month of February. Some
Yeah.
really good stuff. We're going to dip in and out of consciousness stuff. It definitely is still the focus point on what we do here, or mostly. But I occasionally want to weave a couple paranormal guys in here, like we did today, which was awesome. Riff Nation, they're doing awesome stuff over there. So, and always, in any time we look at this field, and I always like to point out or ask a guest, like, what is the purpose? Like, what are we doing this for? Because some people will not have an answer and not know, and some people will give answers, as the guest did tonight. Which shows that you have a purpose for why you're doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? And that's always a great thing to hear from someone in the field of the phenomena, period. Really anything under the phenomena.
Yeah. No, I was listening to definitely the closing statements too that they were making, and I was hearing like some of the same stuff we're talking about, just like there's a higher power out there. We don't know the name of it, it doesn't really have a name. It's outside of that, it can't be contained within a name type of thing. And so you just hear like a resonance that just keeps repeating itself over and over, no matter whether you're talking about UFOs or people working with, ceremonies, or our buddy James White, on the Santee Res. It's all the same resonance in the background, and you can hear it and feel it. I do, and I think it's just a beautiful thing, because I recognize pieces of myself, because I recognize like phrases. I've been talking for 6 years now. I just was thinking about the other day. I was like, man, I've been public speaking for 6 years, and some of the same phrases pop up every time we have a guest on. So it's just a beautiful thing, man, to see how I see it.
You are absolutely correct about that, and that's why we'll continue doing this a lot, many more conversations to have. And one other thing I wanted to point out too, I had to bring it up. You saw that. I know you. Hopefully, you were listening when I brought up the dowsing rods and the pendulums. I was like, my God, you would definitely want to know about this. What type of tools do you use in this field, like triggers, things that may trigger activity or read activity, such as dowsing rods and pendulums? And they gave the honest answer. The pendulums was definitely something that they pointed to, but he did make a point. Dennis made a point about the dowsing rods on how those could technically be manipulated, and that was a thing that I wanted to make sure that's highlighted, because some of these tools could be used to deceive, based on the mechanics of the tool. And he said he trusts only himself to use a dowsing rod because he knows he's not doing any funny business behind the scenes, and that's genuine. And I love that, because yes, I could easily see someone using a dowsing rod and manipulating the results based on the mechanics of how a dowsing rod works, right? So
Sure.
We got about 30 seconds.
No, they're both all those things and other things are just like conduits for energy to go through, so we can see them. And I firmly believe that.
Yeah, and dowsing rods, I could see where, if you are using them in the correct method, if you're really not manipulating the movement, because they do move with the slightest bit of your movement, they will move, right?
And also,
so if you're being genuine, then they will work the way that they're supposed to work.
Also, having them in sleeves that you put your hands on, like separate sleeves that they can float in inside. Those are the good ones. Like,
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. So it's just not on the inside of your palm.
Yeah, so some of them are just like wires going down, but if you can get one that's inside another, usually it's copper. So get copper dowsing rods, and then copper sleeves.
Definitely, we will consider that, Drew Banky, getting the sleeves, as we go ahead and jump right on into our final break tonight on the After Hours Radio Show right here on Spaced Out Radio. The After Hours wrap up. It's your guy, Mr. Rob G, Drew Banky. We will be doing this a little bit more and then wrapping the show up. Don't go anywhere. Hang tight. We'll come right back if you leave. All right, crystal clear, crystal clear. What's up, Drew Banky?
Today's Hawk's birthday, man. 3 years old.
Happy birthday, Hawk. Wait. Gotta do like Dave. Happy birthday to you. You gotta show him this. I'm not just singing for nothing, Drew.
I'm gonna say
happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Hawk. You're an awesome guy, and the sky's the limit for you. You got a dad like Drew Banky. The world is yours. Happy birthday to you from Uncle Rob G.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we did the whole had him a little cupcake and got to blow out his candles right before I come out here. Just when I was getting ready to come out here, we did that, kind of close out his day. Started off with he got a little present. He got some cowboy boots he's been wanting, and then that big jungle gym that a lot of people have seen on all the social media that I put together in the back room. He got that. That was his big present, but he got that a few days ago. But yeah, he's sick. He woke up sick. It was crazy though, dude. Like, he went to bed last night fine. We was talking about his birthday. He was excited about it, and then I swear it's like the same time when he was born, like to the minute almost, he got a fever and he was sick, and he's been sick all day. Like, and I was thinking about it. I was like, it makes sense. Like, for me, I'm about to I'm coming up on 45. I'm 3 months away to the date to be in 45. So me remembering, me being born and stuff, it's not a possibility. Most people don't remember that, it have no memory of being born. But for him, that's only 3 years ago, and it was a major. So he I'm sure he has active memories of that. And it was just interesting how it lined up,
Yeah,
and he doesn't get sick. He doesn't get sick at all. So
that's an interesting thing to point out, because when I think about how far back I can remember, I remembered some stuff, and I didn't know if it was true or not until I ran it by my mother, and she verified what it was that I was seeing. Because I remember being in a crib. I remember seeing, being at a particular house, and and I'm just like, I'm thinking to myself, like, there's no way that I could be remembering something from that age. When you talk about like 2 years old, 3 years, that's crazy, right? But she validated it for me, and it was definitely seeing back that far, which I think is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I've had a vision in ceremonies and stuff like that. I went back to when I was born and had a snippet of being born and overhearing the nurses and the doctors talk about I was going up for adoption, and that was the onset, within my first couple breaths of like this huge trauma of the adoption and everything. It was it shaped my life, and it was definitely a pivotal point of my whole existence, is that adoption, and it started right at birth. But I only seen that vision in the ceremony, and there's reasons why I realize now, hindsight 2020, why the adoption had to happen and all that stuff. But for Hawk, he was born at 28 weeks. It wasn't even 29 weeks, and he was 2 pounds 0.02 pounds. So he was just barely over 2 pounds when he was born, fit in the palm of your hands. And now he's climbing jungle gyms, riding mules, and it's just amazing. And I made a post today, and if anyone's listening, I know there's I know there's some people in the chat that was around the time and following and listened to me talk around the time he was born. And I know there's a lot of prayers, there was a lot of donations, comments, and everything. And I appreciate each and every one of them. And I was just reflecting on that today of, all that great energy and support from the community that we had in that time. And it shows that, the power of prayer. That kid is a walking testament to the power of prayer, I believe.
That is awesome stuff, Drew. You make me feel all warm inside right now, man. We got about 3 seconds to back from break. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio after hour number 3. Last half of the hour, back into the show, back with Drew Banky. And the after hours wrap up as we go ahead and talk about some really great stuff. If you're watching the show from social media, some of you are, hit the little heart button and let them know you like the show. We'd appreciate it. And also hit the follow button if you wouldn't mind. We do this 7 days a week, 365 right here, Spaced Out Radio. This is the After Hours Radio Show, and we are jumping right back into the wrap up. We were talking about a lot of stuff, and I was just thinking over the break about remote viewing, and we always talk about that. And we talk about how it's obvious it's something that we're able to do. The government, studied it for so long and probably still use it to this day, truthfully, because it would be the awesome tool to use when you think about warfare, being able to remote view some assets or things of that nature. And then it just made me think, I was thinking about like when I was a kid and growing up, and like wondering if mothers remote view, because sometimes they know what you're doing when they're not even there. And it's almost like that women's intuition that kind of kicks in, which is another magical thing that is 100% real. And it just kind of, makes me think about our own mothers being able to tap into that awareness or into that field to kind of spy on us and see what we're doing. You ever thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, the connection between a child and a mother is really deep for sure, and father obviously, but the connection between a mother and a child is much deeper. And if it's worked on, it's the sky's the limit. That connection could be reattached. I mean, you're talking about a being like living inside a body, for right around 10 months. That's a crazy connected, and being their heartbeats are synced up, being that close, their heartbeats have to be synced up. And I had an experience even with my adopted mother, like, the woman that raised me, Lynn Banky. She passed away in 2005 from cancer. And it wasn't but a few years ago where I had a dream. I had a few dreams here and there over time where she would come into my dreams, but it was, years and years. And all of a sudden I seen her, and I was on a street, and I looked across the street, and she was walking. She had some boxes, and it was clear there was like nonverbal, but all the message was she was going to start another incarnation or whatever. She had been sticking around. Basically, she had been sticking around it and in an in-between point, watching over me and helping me. But she was to a point where she didn't need me anymore because she was being escorted by my wife. So my wife's spirit was escorting my mother's spirit into this door and opened a door for her, and she walked through and I guess reincarnated. That was like the overall message I got from it. And because my wife was taking over now, so I had that dream like years and years ago, but it was and now I don't. And I smelt my mother's perfume that she had. And this is my adopted mother. So it wasn't, connected through the womb or whatever. It was just connected through nurturing. So it's very interesting, but I think it's possible even without the actual biological connection, because I was deeply connected to my adopted mother, you know.
Yeah. And you know, when you, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a great example of not having maybe a biological parent, but still a parent in the sense that they care for you and would still be able to connect with you in that way. And it goes more on the frequency path of maybe, you know, it's obvious that having that connection, she had to tune into, or vice versa, you tuned into hers, but you were on the same frequency, which is how she was even able to have those maternal instincts, even with the child that's not biological. So that's awesome, and even goes further to show what this energy thing is a real thing. But jumping even further down the path, I've always wondered if, you know, once you do go to that other side, as we lose people all the time in this world, and every time someone loses someone's condolences, prayers, healing, and we're all going to lose someone at some point. So I always look at it as, okay, the moment, you know, is once that happens and you have passed on to this other side, are you now, because you see images of quote unquote heaven, and heaven may not be heaven, it's whatever's on this other side of this veil, right? And that could be heaven, it can be perceived as whatever you want to perceive it as. But you know, is it a place of celebration, right? Is it a moment of celebration to say, you know, I've even thought of it as graduation, right? As graduating from this existence into the next, because I had a thought process that said, hey, what if, because we think of this world we're in now as a physical reality sort of world, then we look at wherever we go next as maybe spiritual and not the same experience as what we have here. But what if you're born into another existence when you leave here? Excuse me. Or if that next existence is just as real to the individual as this existence is, and we just find ourselves on multiple existences that we end up being born into it. And just a thought process, obviously there's nothing that we could point to say that that would be the case, but it's just an interesting thing to think about. What do you think about that?
No, I think we keep reincarnating in this physical, like 3D, where we're able to create, life, we're able to create homes and, you know, art and all these other things. We're able to create like in this 3D form, but we have trials and tribulations. But I think we keep going through this until we realize like we're in heaven. Like this is heaven right now, because we can create, like we can create our heaven or hell in this space right now. Like, you know, even my son today, like it was his birthday, but I kept reflecting all day about like how grateful I was, you know, and how hard I prayed 3 years ago to the day. You know, if you would have seen me 3 years ago to the day, you would have seen me like my eyes closed and really, really praying very, very hard, like for this child's life. And you know, to see him alive now, like 3 days, you know, 3 years later, like this could very well be heaven. Like, because I mean, I was just filled with love and gratitude. There was nothing outside of that. Like, you know, and what's the definition? Is heaven a place or is it a consciousness state? You know, and that's one thing that we need to like figure out. And I think that's you know, it depends on the individual. Like what, you know, how do you view it? You know, I believe it's more of a consciousness or emotional state, and I believe heaven can be experienced here in the physical form.
Well, I just look at all the, you know, talk about dimensions, multi dimensions, and things of that nature, and I wouldn't even say necessarily, because I know it sounds like I may be talking about reincarnation, and I'm not necessarily even talking about that. I'm just talking about your energy just being reborn into some other thing that when you get there, you look at that as a new reality as opposed to where you were before.
Yeah.
And one thing that makes me think about that is, you know, the moment a person passes, they're experiencing whatever that is. They're there. You know what I mean? And you have people who have been in this field who have studied exactly this, who spent their life studying exactly this, and then they get that answer at the moment that they pass, or they move on to this next stage. And it's just a wonder of what that is, because in when we look at reality as we think it is, then we look at passing as a sad thing, because that person is no longer here with
Yeah.
us in our existence. But maybe they're going to somewhere that is awesome, and you know, it ends up being like, hey, this is actually a celebration. This is a great thing. You
Yeah.
probably can't wait till you get there, actually.
Yeah, but this, I mean,
Find that out.
the reality you're talking about, this is a regional reality. So, you know, Western culture. You go to Hindu culture, Buddhas, you go to India and start talking about passing, and it's celebrated. You know, it's a very celebrated thing, because it's a new beginning, you know. And this is the same thing. Like I seen a post a few days ago. Someone was talking about. It was just a few words. It was like, "Is this the beginning of the apocalypse, or is this the beginning of the end of the world?" I said, "No, it's the beginning of the beginning of the world." You know, I guess it goes all back to perspective. And for those people that have had near death experiences, including myself, like, you know, I don't I don't fear death, but I don't want, but I also, I know also, like, I need to teach my kids a different way of mourning, you know. And this is another thing that has been coming to me lately, getting into, you know, middle age and stuff. There's people that pass my age or younger all the time, you know, a heart attack or just from natural causes, not just like horrific things, just from natural causes. So it's not, wouldn't be unheard of that something like that could happen to me. And I was looking at my children, and I'm like, man, I know how hard it is to mourn. I've mourned a lot of people, especially over the past, you know, couple years, you know, these past 4 or 5 years, very close members of my family. So knowing that your kids are going to have to mourn you one day, you know, hopefully, like, you don't want to, nobody wants to have to bury their children. Like, it's the way it's set up, your children bury you. And so you're setting, just sitting there looking at my son and my daughter and my other kids, you know, seeing Engage and Alyssa, and everybody, just everybody that's in your life, you know, you're setting them up to mourn you one day, especially your children, you know, that, you know, that's going to hurt. And but that's the point. You have to shift your mindset, like, and get out of that, like, okay, I need to spend the rest of the days that I do have and try to guide my children in a different way of thinking, that so when the time does come, they know that, you know, I haven't went anywhere, like the energy never died, you know, it got transferred somewhere else. And we talked about that before. I believe, you know, there's a couple truths that we agree upon as a human race. One is that there's an energy inside each and every human, like an electrical spark, that we really don't know where it comes from exactly, like, but it's there. You know, that's why we use paddles and jump start the heart if someone has a heart attack, things like that. There's electrical spark in us, there's energy, and there's another truth, that energy never dies. It only gets transformed or moved to a different spot or whatever. So that being, those two truths put together are solid proof, scientific proof, that we had agreed upon as a human race. Those two truths combined say that we live forever, really. And from my experience in near death, like, you know, the memory never stopped. The lights went out, but the memory, you know, and the spark of consciousness that's speaking to you right now never stopped.
Yeah, and that's some good stuff, Drew Banky. We're gonna go ahead and get ready to shut this thing down and jump into some weird news. I appreciate you coming in with the After Hours wrap up, and we will see you tomorrow as we talk to our guest Michelle Blasky on the art of film. She's a film producer. She's actually pretty good too. I looked at her content, producing horror and the phenomena. So it should be an awesome show, and looking forward to your input on that as well.
I'm looking forward to being there. Talk to everybody tomorrow, and stay safe, stay warm. If you're being affected by the fires, praying for you. If you're being affected by the snow, praying for you. It's cold here. That's about the only thing we're dealing with here. So, and thinking about everybody that's going through trials and tribulations right now. So,
all right, Drew Benke, After Hours Wrap Up. Thank you so much, man, for coming in. We will see you again tomorrow night. Have a great rest of your night. Take care.
Peace, brother.
All right, later. All right, that was Drew Benke with the After Hours Wrap Up, guys, right here on the Spaced Out Radio After Hours Radio Show. We're going to go ahead and jump into a couple weird news stories, weird news, UFO, and weird news of the week, because why not? Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, UFO and weird news of the week. First story we're going to jump into, and this is a weird one. This is one I've always, and maybe we'll do a show around this particular topic, but a woman wakes up with an Italian accent after suffering from stroke, despite never visiting that country. I always think that's crazy and awesome when you have someone that's gone through a traumatic event like that wake up and can fluently speak another language or whatnot. But jumping into the story, courtesy of LAD Bible, Athea Bryden recalled the moment she began talking with a, quote, Italian accent, even though she's from London. A woman has revealed what life is like after she began with an, quote, began to speak with an Italian accent after suffering a stroke, saying it's like someone is impersonating her. Althea Bryden, 58, is retired and lives in London with her husband and full-time carer, Winston, 63. After suffering from a stroke on the May 4th, 2024, she was left unable to speak and feel the upper right portion of her body for 3 months due to a carotid web in her neck, or carotid web, rather, which is what is believed to have caused her stroke. While Althea was able to have it removed via surgery in August of this year, when she could speak again, she was left dumbfounded when her words were tinged with an Italian accent, despite never having visited the country. Althea admitted that her new accent even led to her slipping into Italian words during conversation and adopting mannerisms. These new words she used included Mamma Mia, Bambino, and Si. Althea spoke to PA Real Life and revealed the moment she realized her accent had changed. She says, quote, completely out of the blue, I just started speaking. Then she, the nurse, looked as shocked as I did. I remember thinking, who is that talking? Firstly, I couldn't believe that it was me talking, but I also didn't recognize the sound of my voice. The nurse rushed to get colleagues round to my bed. No one could believe I was talking after so long, but the more I spoke, the more I was confused. The more confused we all became. She explained that they asked her whether she has an Italian accent before the stroke and revealed to her that it was a strong accent. But after days had passed and her accent remained, she felt like she had no control over her voice. Althea added, doctors and nurses saw me as a bit of a medical marvel. None of the nurses, doctors, therapists, or surgeons had dealt with foreign accent syndrome in their whole careers. This is when I realized just how rare the condition is. I wish more people knew about it. Before, I didn't sound like the Queen, but I sounded British. I've always lived in London, but all my family are from Jamaica. After going to a speech and language therapist, it was suggested that she suffered from a rare syndrome which some people develop, leading them to take on a different accent. Called the foreign accent syndrome, the NHS describes it as happening as a result of brain damage, such as a stroke. Although Althea is waiting for a formal diagnosis, she feels like she's lost her identity. Even my laugh is not the same. It's not me. It's like like someone is impersonating me. I feel like a clown with an upside down smile that people are watching perform. They are laughing, but I still have an upside down smile. She added, quote, "It's very sad. Everything is different. Even my body language is different. People aren't meeting the original me. I don't know who I am." Althea was also diagnosed with aphasia, which is when a person has difficulty with their language or speech, as per the NHS. She said, quote, "My brain couldn't understand it. It was very frightening for me, and I felt afraid and confused." That is bananas, right? And I've thought about that. A person that has woken up, because there are cases of not just people waking up with different accents, but people, kids in some cases, waking up from a coma or some traumatic injury and totally speaking a totally different language. And so you got to ask yourself, how is that even possible? Well, before I got into ufology and the whole consciousness side of this and understanding like what consciousness could really mean, and that we really don't understand what our consciousness is capable of doing and what abilities that we have. You would think it's possible, if consciousness is all knowing and connecting with energies out there, then why wouldn't you be able to draw in data from another part of the consciousness that controls the universe, right? Why wouldn't you be able to? And I think it kind of, if these cases are real, because I don't know anyone obviously that has gone through this experience, but if it is even real, it just is, for me, something you could almost use as evidence that there is definitely something more to our abilities as human beings and what we're able to connect to and what our capabilities are. You know what I mean? So definitely a rabbit hole that I want to jump down. And I will be doing a show about that because I think there's some exploring to do there. I would like to find out if they're all hoaxes. Maybe they are. Or maybe these are all real cases where somehow, some way, people are tapping into languages and even ancient languages. You've heard of people speaking tongues and things of that nature. So maybe this is a topic, yeah, we will definitely create a show around. I think people would like to see that. Let me know in the comments. But I would like to thank our guests. Let's start there. Ryan C. Jones and Dennis Estlock tonight for awesome show, hours 1 and 2. I also want to thank Steve Stockton, Tales Untold, Mrs. Person Mysteries, Andrew Banky with the After Hours wrap up for hour number 3. Another jam-packed awesome show right here on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. We want to thank also the man that you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal. He's the man that's rocking us in each and every weekend, teaching us to never say never again, because we all know, yes, the phenomena is real. And because of that, anything and everything is possible. If you love the show tonight, make sure you show that love by throwing your horns up. We also appreciate you, all the listeners, from whenever and wherever in the world you may be listening from. Thanks for tuning your frequency to Spaced Out Radio, where we do what we do best. What's that, you ask? We own the night. Once again, this show is copyright SOR Media Ventures Limited and Spaced Out Radio. It has been a pleasure once again serving you as your host. I am Mr. Rob G. This is the After Hours Radio Show. And to all you space travelers out there, this isn't a goodbye nor a farewell. However, as we go off air for the night, you can best believe we will be right back here tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. You guys have a great rest of your night. Right here, Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. Throw your horns up. All right. Awesome show, guys. Thanks for coming on in. It's been great. Let me go ahead and get this show uploaded here. And tomorrow's going to be an even more awesome show as well. We have Michelle Blasky, filmmaker, horror filmmaker, has some ties to the phenomena. We're going to be jumping into a lot of great conversation tomorrow. It'll be a different type of show, right? Something you're not used to, kicking off the new year. But in the end, it's going to be epic. You can best believe that. And we striving to raise the bar for you guys this year. We're going to do exactly that. So let me get this show uploaded, and then we can go ahead and wrap it up here. All right, give me just a second here, guys, as I type in the info for this show here. All right. And I want to thank all our support here for the night as well. Let me go ahead and give it up to welcome to the show, Major Lee, who's hit us with at least 4 super chats for the night. So we do appreciate you. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. And welcome to the show. And then we got Deb from Sacramento showing love as well with a couple super chats here tonight. Thanks, guys. The shows over on the Social Dig, I'm actually switching over streaming services right now. So I have to take all my assets, my show assets from one platform and move those assets into the new platform that I'm going to be using, it's already set up. I'm just moving things over. So I'm going to be doing a test show because it's totally foreign to me as far as operating it. We're going to test it out here within the next day or two. So be looking for the notification for that. It should be a little different experience, a few different features. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Just keep an eye out there within the next day or two. We will be doing a test show over there, and I appreciate seeing you guys over there. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and get ready to wrap this thing up so I can finish the edits here and go ahead and trek back to my place of residence, which is across town. So with that being said, thanks for coming on in, guys. Let's rock out of here. We want retribution. You know how it goes. And we are out of here. Take care. See you tomorrow night.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.